Welcome to the TFG Aftershow, folks, where each and every week our goal is to take you deeper into things we do to help people here at the Financial Guys offices. We also like to look at our key people and some of the prominent difference makers out there. As always, if you need us throughout the week, folks, please call us at 833-FIN-GUYS. You can also check out our website, thefinancialguys.com. I'm Mike Hoeflich, along with my partner, Mike Sperrazza. Shortly, I want to let you know that we will be joined by Arizona's Cochise County Sheriff and Chairman of the National Sheriff's Association Border Security Committee, Mark Dannels. You do not want to miss that, folks, so stay tuned. But we'll start with a visit with wealth manager and a colleague and friend, Ron Waskow. Ron, thanks for being here.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. You know, as you know, what we try to do here in the office every single day is add value to people's lives. I know just all throughout the day, Ron and I, you, Mike, in the property and casualty area, Ron and I in the more financial advisory, financial planning area, just try to make the best out of every dollar that people have. Today, I think, Ron, we want to talk a little bit about business owners. They face, obviously, specific challenges, and you, Mike, would know this as well. Like business owners, they take on the risk of so many things versus just typical employees of companies. But let's just talk a little bit about how this last year with COVID has really, emphasized, put a spotlight on how difficult it can be to be a business owner.
Absolutely. And that's one of the areas that I think we've been able to provide a lot of value is to bring resources to business owners. If there's one thing that we saw through this whole coronavirus issue is that there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties out there, a lot of risks that you face that you might not even be aware of. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that our business owners found is they might not always have the cash flow that they've come to expect out of their business. And a common mistake that we see, unfortunately all too often, is when business owners are planning for retirement, oftentimes they put too many eggs in the basket of the value of their own business. Mm-hmm. They might think that their retirement strategy is that they're going to sell their business, they're going to get X amount of dollars from it, and they're going to live off that through retirement. Right. Well, I think what we saw earlier in 2020 with the whole coronavirus issue was a wake-up call to a lot of business owners, and that they realized that they had to look outside their business for opportunities to build wealth and to grow their wealth and to grow their own personal value potentially outside their business. There's a lot of tools that we can utilize to do that for business owners, Absolutely. Whether they're saving inside a 401k or a simple plan that's associated with their business, or whether they do it on their own through a traditional or Roth IRA, making sure that they have enough protection in the form of life insurance. Sure. Just taking a broad strategies approach to look at all aspects of financial planning and how it integrates with their business to get them personally, ultimately, to their goal at the end of the day.
Right. And it seems like business owners, if everything just proceeds as normal, like say for 30 to 40 years, they probably can do it, right? But we clearly saw that get a huge monkey wrench put into that planning with COVID. And what I really love about what you said, it's really the idea of diversification of income sources. And I deal with people all the time on Social Security claiming strategies, and even just the way you take income out of your own business can impact you getting Social Security benefits in a certain way and at certain levels someday.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not just a dollar amount necessarily. It's where those dollars are coming from and what are the tax ramifications of that. Yeah. We look at integrating, obviously, Social Security, how that plays a role, what the tax situation is with specific accounts, whether it's a brokerage account, a taxable account, a tax-deferred account like an IRA or a 401k, or a tax-free account like a Roth. Sure. They're all going to play a role in there, and it's important to not only have a saving strategy, but a distribution strategy. And I think that's where, a lot of people kind of miss the boat.
No doubt. And that's where I know I shine and Ron Reinstein shine when it comes to what did you accumulate and how are we going to use it in your retirement. We always say, it's not just getting to retirement, but it's getting through a successful, fortified plan all the way through retirement. What I like, too, is this really makes me think of a puzzle. There's all sorts of puzzle pieces, and probably more so, it wouldn't be like the simple 12-piece puzzle that 3-year-olds are doing. It's the 1,000-piece pieces that business owners need. But even on your end, I mean, you're always talking about protection and low premiums, right? I mean, protection is the key, but then let's drive down the cost if we can.
Well, I was going to say, before we got on, we were talking to Ron a little bit about life insurance too, and I think that's another area where it's not a one-size-fits-all. Ron, you know that better than I do, but it's not everybody fits into this company with this life insurance program. There's many different things you can do, just like on my end. There's many different products out there too. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive, and I think that's where, working with somebody like Ron, it's very helpful because he can search out and find the best product for you at the lowest price.
No doubt. So
yeah, and it's not always just about price in that arena. If you're a business owner in certain income limits, you're limited as far as where you can save the money. Oftentimes, they can leverage their life insurance that they need anyways, utilize that as a savings vehicle with potential favorable tax consequences down the road to utilize as future income.
No doubt. So Ron, business owners that are out there that have tuned in or heard about us, what would you say, just like a real brief list of things that they'd want to gather before they come in and see a guy like you?
Obviously, you want to have all your tax documents together. Have your corporate returns, your personal returns, have all that stuff in place. If you have a 401k or some type of qualified plan in place, have some information as it pertains to that. We find oftentimes a lot of people set those up through their payroll companies, but they're not necessarily tailored to meet that specific business. Often they're kind of cookie-cutter, plug-and-play type plans where they might not necessarily be reaping the most benefits that those plans can potentially provide for those clients.
Awesome. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I'll tell you what, folks, if you want to sort of peel back your whole business and really look at all the layers of where you're spending money and all the layers where you can make some money, but also when you're not working there anymore, when you decide, hey, it's time to shut down those doors for good, what do we do next? And let Ron Waskow, let our team help you, okay? So, Ron, thanks again for joining us.
Appreciate it, gentlemen. Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
We appreciate you. Thank you, pal. Folks, when we return, we will be joined by Arizona's Cochise County Sheriff and Chairman of the National Sheriff's Association Border Security Committee, Mark Dannels. Folks, you do not want to miss this next interview. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, and now we are pleased to be joined by Arizona's Cochise County Sheriff and Chairman of the National Sheriff's Association Border Security Committee, Mark Dannels. Sheriff, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a great pleasure, and this is these are trying times, very difficult times. You certainly are wonderful to take some time out to just inform people, because this is a big deal. A lot of people are not hearing the truth about what's going on at the border, and we are so happy to have you. You are literally on the front lines. Sheriff, let me start here. In an interview with Judge Janine Pirro, you told her, quote, "We're in a global health pandemic, Judge, but we're being ignored on the southwest border. It's almost like we're not part of America anymore." You said, "What I'm seeing down here is total opposite of what the CDC is recommending. Are we part of this country or are we not?" Let me ask you this. What's the direct impact of this diminished ability for you to keep illegals from crossing the border on the folks right in the area you serve, your county, Cochise County?
Well, and I appreciate that, Mike. You know, I've seen Dr. Fauci speak to the country. He speaks regularly to wear a mask, social distancing. It has a potential to get worse. All the precautions that we've been listening to for the last year. What's upsetting about that is the impact we're seeing here on the southern border. We have 400 to 500 kids a day coming across. We have 4,000 overall adults, up to 6,000 a day coming on the southwest border. These people are not being tested. They're being released into communities. I had Sheriff tell me the other day through his thread, we have a thread email we do every day on text, that 150 were released into his community. And these people aren't being tested. So over the last year with COVID, we've all been through this, the impact of, we've lost family members, we've lost loved ones, community members, we've lost businesses being closed. We've shut this country down to attack this virus. But now that we have opened up the southwest border, it seems like we have been the lost, forgotten part of this country when it comes to COVID. It's upsetting, it's disrespectful, and it's so disappointing that our top administrators have left us alone out here. And I would challenge Dr. Fauci to address it on the southwest border.
Why do you think that this is not even a talked about issue from that side? I mean, it really, I mean, if you don't know any better, you think, oh, everyone's getting tested, or, oh, there's nobody coming in down there. Why is this not being talked about?
Well, it's being downplayed. This is a poor policy. It's showing itself to be a very failed policy. Nobody accepts or wants to accept when it doesn't work, but we need to, because we're putting the health and the risk on the backs of Americans that have been through this for the last year. And anybody that's lost a loved one totally can respect what I'm saying on that. But it's time as leaders. We're in leadership, today's leadership, whether you're a sheriff, you're a health administrator, or a president of the United States, congressional, wherever you're sitting, we have to take risk every day. And we do it based on our oath of offices, and that is to protect Americans, whether it's public safety, whether it's health. And what I'm seeing on this border, those being released into our communities, not just on the southwest border, they're being bussed into communities throughout the United States, is a direct conflict of what's going on with our health pandemic.
Sheriff, let me ask you this. President Biden has recently selected Vice President Harris to lead, he says, the border crisis, and they say challenge. I think crisis is more appropriate, especially after I've talked to people like you. What do you think of the president's choice?
Well, let me say this. Let me go back to the avoidance here again. And I heard when President Biden and through his press secretary say this was a challenge. There is nobody wearing a badge, retired, current, local, state, or federal, that has not called this a crisis. Mm-hmm. Our governor has called this a crisis. Our Attorney General, General McGuire from our state, has called this a crisis. Texas Governor Abbott has called this a crisis. Retired Border Patrol chiefs have called this a crisis. It's amazing that we can't accept the fact that we have a crisis on our border that was triggered the day President Biden took office. And again, whether he wants to blame Trump or not is irrelevant. You are the current sitting national leader. You need to take responsibility, and let's fix it as a collaborative team. Now, President Biden's his choice. Is it bothers him? My governor came out yesterday and was very displeased and voiced his concern about her being the pick. Mm-hmm. We need somebody. You would think the Homeland Security Secretary, Mayorkas, would be the man running this. But you would think that who's ever going to be there, it needs to be a collaborative team of governors, border governors, sheriffs, health professionals, DHS, and CBP professionals at the table looking for the 10 best reasonable, balanced solutions and take the dang politics out of it. We can get down the road. I'm concerned with the selection. Obviously, he has that authority to pick her, our vice president, but the bottom line is let's get expertise at the table that have been down this road before. And I'll say this to you too, Mike. If we take the lessons of the past, where we've been, what's worked, what's not worked, we can fix this problem.
And Sheriff, I'll say too, Mike and I did a podcast last week, and we talked about this. It's funny, the week that she is named the person in charge, she's laughing on national TV during an interview about, I can't go down there today, but maybe in the future I'll get down there. Like, that to me is not a great look, that the week you're getting named to that position, you're laughing and almost mocking it that, I can't get down there today,
I think we all would agree that until you recognize you have a crisis, it's going to be hard to fix it.
Completely
because
agreed.
When you take this lightheartedly, that it's all being blown up. If something happens in my county that's broke, I go to that where it's broke, and then I work with those that are there to fix it. And I get the magnitude of being a vice president versus a sheriff is different, but the reality, the principle, the concept, the leadership's all the same. And the vice president needs to come down this border, meet with the border sheriffs, meet with the mayors, meet with the governors, meet with the health people, and let's see what we can do and get our CB people and the folks wearing badges, not the political appointees, and that sounds horrible, but those wearing badges, let's get them to the table and let's fix this problem.
And Sheriff, I think I'd agree that the longer you continue to not make this the crisis it truly is, the longer it's going to go on and the worse it's going to get. Now, have you been contacted by anyone from the White House to get your insight, to get your support?
Let me say this. After President Biden was elected, I was part of the National Sheriff Association transition team for President Biden. So there's about 4 sheriffs. We spoke about collaboration, collective efforts, accessible programs, prevention, enforcement, local involvement, which is the key to my message. The importance of having local leadership on the table, because at the end of the day, no matter what policy this president and his administration make, it comes back to communities. So we talked about that. I was very optimistic, Mike, that we were heading in the right direction after that meeting. In fact, I came back to my National Sheriff Association committee, others, and said, I think we might be going in the right direction. Put all the political rhetoric aside, I think reality and policing is going to come forward here and surface. The day President Biden took office and declared the southwest border a non-emergency, which stopped funding, resources, physical barrier, technology, subterranean sensors, all the things that were stopped. And then we've had this domino of prevention and enforcement programs slipping. Nobody has ever talked to me since. No.
So this I want to know, and I'm sure our audience would like to know, is there a disagreement with the Biden administration on the approach being taken, or is it simply they don't want an approach at all? They don't want to substitute the physical wall for technology. They just don't want to put any dollars or resources toward protection. Which one is it?
Well, that's a great question, and I wish I had the answer for that one, because I have had conversations with CVP's leadership. I've had some conversations, I've had 2 to be exact, where Department of Homeland Security senior leadership, not the secretary, his senior leadership has called, give me an example, MPP, Migrant Protective Protocol. When we got a call on that, I was told, hey, can you be on the call in 8 minutes, Sheriff? I jumped on the call. They read a statement that the following morning they were going to announce the MPP, 25,000 coming into the United States. They said there will be no questions at this time, and that was the telephone call. There was no two-way dialogue. We had a follow-up call a week later in regards to COVID and the other issues going on the southwest border, but we were told we could not ask questions again. Those are not conversations, so that's why I say no.
Why waste your time? Why would they waste your time? I mean, you've got issues to deal with right now as we speak to you, and they're asking you if within 8 minutes you can get on a call, only to not be heard, to be muted.
The second time they did that, I did make the comment that we were past due on questions and answers. We were totally past due on questions and answers. We did have a call after that with the folks wearing the badge from CVP, the senior leadership. That was a very productive and candid call. But again, that's where the line's drawn between political and those wearing the badge. And the senior folks from DHS, let me rephrase that, from CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, I get it. I feel for them. I applaud them, what they're trying to do right now. But there's politics waving the flag above them.
And not to point out the obvious here, but this regime ran on 2 things, right? Unity and transparency. Those were the 2 things that they said from the very beginning that they were going to do. They were going to unify us all, and they were going to be more transparent than the Trump administration was, right? From what you're saying, and you're not the only one, I was watching Fox News earlier this week, and they had Lindsey Graham on, and they also had Mitch McConnell on, and he was saying the same things that you were saying. I have not spoken to that group, and we really don't get to ask these questions and get the answers we want. And to me, that just shows point blank, you're not for unifying, right? Because if you were for unifying, they would talk to people like you or a Lindsey Graham or a Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Or if you were for transparency, you would let people ask questions or maybe have press conferences once in a while. So I think that, to me, is what's so tough, too, is there's no way for anybody to really get answers or get solutions or get anything.
Well, Mike, let me say this. I think it's very hypocritical because what they criticize the current or the past president on is the same thing they're doing here. I saw that on Sunday, ABC News had a story with our Arizona governor, Governor Ducey, and myself, where we're talking about the lack of transparency, the lack of a vision and a plan. And then they had Secretary Mayorkas on there that's saying the border's secure. Let me stop on that for a minute. His definition of a secure border and ours, to include his own CBP experts, is completely different. Number two is he said he had a plan. Well, let me just say this to you all, is if you have a plan that's being implemented on the southwest border, you haven't shared it with my governor, my attorney general, mayors, sheriffs, their own congressional people. So I would say if you have a plan, but you're not going to give us the privilege to share it with us, then why are we having the privilege to have the impact of it? Because right now our communities are being impacted by this.
Well, and clearly, if they haven't even shared the plan and a timeline, I mean, I could see if they have a plan that's just not ready to be implemented, but they haven't even given you a plan with a timeline, and you don't know your role.
And by the way, it's now 65 plus days into this administration. It's
Right.
not January 22nd right now, right? It's late March, almost April.
Well, I think it's a tragedy, and we're seeing the tragedy both on public safety, on national security, on humanitarian, and last but not least is the COVID pandemic. We're seeing 4 different levels of tragedy in our communities, not just on the southwest border, because what happens here will affect every community in this country. So I truly believe that as elected leaders, as sheriff, as our governor, all of us involved in this, we have an expectation to share that plan.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Sheriff. Can you pinpoint the specific date or the time thereabouts when things began to change at that border? I mean, it's always a challenge for you. It's not like things were a picnic, a walk in the park during the Trump administration. Things may have had their ebbs and flows of more illegals coming across, some days less, but it's never been easy for you. But can you just go into some of the policy, the outcomes, compare to the Trump administration to this now current Biden administration, so our audience really gets a sense of the significance of how things have changed?
Well, let me give you a little historical on this. Back in 93, 94, based on a couple programs by Border Patrol, Operation Hold the Line, Operation Gatekeeper, actually developed the plan that we're sitting in today, and that is to protect the port of entries and protect populated areas. 3 designated areas along the southwest border, Yuma, El Paso, and San Diego were the 3 designated areas where they provided double fencing, technology, resources, staffing. They put all the efforts there. The other aspect was anytime there was an international port of entry, it was given attention, same way. The other areas of the 31 southwest border counties, they were considered deterrent counties, which means that the cartels, these smuggling organizations, would not use those counties because they were mountainous, the waterways, deserts would be a deterrent. Well, as we sit 30 years later, those rural areas were the biggest impacted by this because, A, we don't have a large population voice. Number 2 is the cartels loved the concealment in those areas, and they exploited them. So in the 90s here in Cochise County, the federal government labeled my county Cocaine Alley because we had so much cocaine coming through our county. And that was acceptable. That was truly acceptable to the federal government. So when I share that frustration with you, that changed who we were in Cochise County based on this plan. They set us up for failure on that. Our population decline, our economy decline, the safety aspect of it, the perception aspect of it, just put a real label on Cochise County. So we come up to current times. 14 was a bad year, and I've seen the ebb and flow, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In 15, we started putting some things together in my county as a sheriff. In 17, we implemented them where we started better collaboration, better collective. We have a virtual system with 700 cameras out there all the way to California and up to Texas and New Mexico. We've done some amazing things, 100% conviction rate, but it took a lot of leadership to come to the table to do that. 19, the surge caravans hit, where you had hundreds and thousands coming across our borders. We all saw in the media. But the public safety aspect that was not shared by the national media, 141 countries in the first 9 months of 19. over 1,000 gang members from 20 different countries, 16,000 violent felons were caught, 200,000 were released into communities, 822 assaults on agents, 3,500 6,100 fraud families, 3,500 children are being exploited by the cartels just in the human sector alone. And what I mean by that is they're bringing them across the line with adults, expedited in the country, kids go back to Mexico, here they come out with some more adults. This is some of the public safety humanitarian tragedies on our border. And we had 271 deaths on our border. By the way, last year in my county alone, my region of the border up to Tucson, we had 181 John and Jane Does die in our desert when we have manageable calm in 2020. We had pretty good manageable calm control on our border. That's during a good time. So my point to you is, and now we're at where when President Biden, when he took office and started with his messaging that we're going to open up this border, it's okay to come here, that's when the slippery slope happened.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it really start kicking up in August when the political rhetoric started kicking, and since that time, and then when he got elected, and then made the decisions in January, it's been a mudslide since. And I hate to say it in it sounds so mean, but it's real, it's factual, stats supported. That's the thing. If you take everything else off the table, the stats are supporting what's going on. We're in a crisis.
And let me ask one question, just the ideology between two different people. With the wall that Trump was promising and that started to build and got a lot accomplished, I think there. Was that helping? For those that say that it was not helping or, we need to stop immediately, was that helping some of these problems or not at all?
You bet it was helping, Mike. And that's what amazes me. You put up a 31-foot wall. And I've worked the border 37 years. And I've seen what a border like without a wall. I've been in shootings on the border. I've seen them. We've chased people to the borders. I mean, you name it, they run across and they're in homeland. And we've had this for years down here. So when the first fence went up, physical barrier went up in the 90s, we saw a difference. It's a symbol of trespass. It also slows people down, gives us a better opportunity to catch them. Nothing compared to something is a difference. It truly is. And now that we have the new technology of 31-foot, better fence, it's friendly, it's environmental friendly, it's better to look at. I mean, there was a win-win going on here. When President Biden stopped that on executive order, strike of a pen, my desert and my border down here is in disarray right now. We have holes in the fence. We have infrastructure that wasn't there before. We have wires hanging on the ground. He stopped a project in midstream, taxpayer project in midstream, and is sitting down there as a mess right now. We're in worse shape now than we were before.
Yeah. Sheriff, let me ask you this. Is there any evidence that this has not been simply an organic thing? I mean, clearly people from Mexico, Central America, and South America, they certainly know what happened with our presidential election. But can you tell us if there is any evidence of a more concerted effort beyond drug cartels doing what they do and being literally just the scumbags they are? Is there any evidence that there's a more concerted effort from a more political machine that's saying, hey, we will support the immigration flooding into the U.S.?
Well, I'll hit that question on two thoughts. Number one, and this came from DHS, badge-wearing CBP leadership. Even in a short time, the comment was made, 140 countries, just from what we're seeing now, are hitting our southwest border. That's a national security. And the other aspect of that is we should be more alarmed on what we don't know is coming across this border. 9/11 taught us something. We all know that. And time is erasing and healing that. The healing's a good thing, but we can never forget it. And I'm worried about that. Second is the fact that I do believe politics is playing this. I truly believe there's ideologies behind this that are opening up our border is the concept and the message here. And when you play politics on the back of Americans for their safety and their quality of life, we will lose. I promise you, we will lose. We take an oath of office, local, state, and federal, to protect Americans. Number one responsibility, we share it at all levels. And when we put politics into that oath, we're in trouble. So I believe politics. I don't believe in coincidences to a degree, and I look at how this has been capitalized here on my county alone, what's going on, and where now border security has been blended into immigration, two separate programs, and now I got our border security folks that are been thinned because now they're in child care, Costco buying formula and diapers instead of being on our border protecting Americans.
Mm-hmm. I think Mike and I would agree with you on just how stressed the communities have all been in the United States, especially along your border, because of COVID, because of the opioid crisis, because of schools being shut down, because of so many, teachers unions saying, no, we can't put our teachers back in schools safely. I mean, these were all very stress-inducing issues, like, crises. And then to have this type of approach at the border where sick people and criminals might be crossing over. Now, of course, there are some innocents who you'd say, my goodness, let's embrace these people who need our help. But predominantly, it's many, many others, right?
Well, I think we need to keep the word legal in mind here, where, legal processes come across our country is so important. But the exploitation of these children, I mean, let's face it, in my county, it's the cartel controls what comes across this border. It's $6,000 a head to come into the country, smuggled by the cartels, which they don't have the money. They are servant to the sex trade, they're servant to drugs, gangs, enforcing, all the things that's not the American dream, it's not the American way of life. They've been promised. So they are being exploited. I call it modern day slavery. We're going to relive this history in 20 to 50 years, look back on this and say, wow, why did we allow this to happen? And whether I'm here on earth or not, the bottom line is this is a huge exploitation of the humans. And whether they're from another country or not, it's sad to see this. And you look at, and I'll just say this, we're getting reports where children are being raped coming up here. In 2019, all the girls were carrying birth control pills with them. They knew what the consequences would be to come up, just make the trip to the border. We're seeing it with our teenage girls coming up here. I'm seeing reports on that, and it's just a tragedy because we all care about people. I care about them, especially our kids. I've been coaching for over 20 years in our local high school. I care about helping kids. And when you see this going on, and then you see them up there, and now they're sitting in these facilities, even the NGOs, national government organizations, are in huge concern right now because they weren't prepared for this. And
Good.
I was just going to say, I've seen 5 charter buses coming from our border in a week, and they're full of kids heading to Phoenix, Arizona, where they can try to find resources for these kids. Once again, it's frustrating, it's concerning, it's alarming, and it's humanitarian, inhumane that's put on the back of these policies.
And before we get to our last question, I mean, you just brought up the point, hypocrisy. And what's sad to me is that, media, and we'll call it both sides here, media is just shoving a narrative down your throat right now. And what you just told us, I didn't know that stuff was going on where people were bringing birth control up from I would have never known that, right? And one side of the equation just completely neglects to talk about that and that issue. And that's a major, major issue. And it's really sad, to be honest with you. That actually kind of took me back for a second. That is sickening, and it's sad. Right? But they want to focus on one side and what they've done, and Trump was putting people in cages and all this other stuff. And from what they're showing now, it might be worse now than it was under Trump with holding people, right?
Well, because we're not heeding to the lessons of the past. And until we start looking back at where we've been and the tragedies we saw back then, and how can we not allow that to happen again? It all goes back to the messaging, the processes, the programs, and we need a president to stand up and say no more. He could lock this border down today. Within one executive order, we're locking it down and regroup what we're doing. In the meantime, we will see people die on our borders. We will see children being violated in every way you can think of. We will see people come to this country to harm all Americans. And I promise you, the drugs, when 90% of all the illicit drugs come through the southwest border, 50% of that comes just through the Arizona border. Arizona, our 4 counties in Arizona. Come into a community and school near you. We all need to be standing up saying, we got a problem.
Well, Sherrif, we're going to leave it right there. And, I just can't thank you enough for informing us, our audience. Our audience cares just as you do. And if we don't hear from people like you, I think we don't have a chance. I mean, Mike and I have talked a lot about this erasing of history, right? We're not allowed to remember the good, or I guess necessarily the bad. And when you don't remember the bad things that have happened and maybe the good things that have worked, you're just doomed to repeat those things. And I think it is more by design. And I don't think these people are ignorant to what's going on. I think they have an agenda. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are basically the sacrificial lambs for them to achieve that policy. So I guess one more thing. We've heard that people might be getting transported, like these illegal immigrants getting transported to other parts of the country. Have you heard anything on that note?
That's all dependent on, it is correct. It's all dependent on the NGOs, the non-government organizations that are getting them into the interior part of the United States. You remember, they're not even, and this is what just talked about 2 days ago, they're not even giving them court dates. Let's think about that for a minute. So there's no judicial process. I think it's 90% of the people that come in the country are not even eligible to become citizens or stay in the country. They're expelled. The way they're doing it now is, how do we ever know? There's no longer a judicial trail to that. There's over 800,000 cases under INS right now to be heard, which is a 6 to 8 year window. So we have put a judicial block in what we're doing on this, which tells me again that there's design to get where we're at. Mm-hmm. I think it's a bad decision. And I'll say this to you. I think it's so important. This is me. This is an opinion by Mark now. Is when we have veterans sleeping in the streets, we have children going to bed hungry every night, and we're setting ourselves up for this too. We got to take care of our own citizens first, and we got a lot of work to do in this country.
And I think that's one thing I'd like to say to end on that. We say that all the time, right? We're all for helping people. It's not that we're against helping people, right? We just want to take, especially during a time of a pandemic, right? Let's take care of our folks first, and then we'll worry about everybody else. I think that's where, this whole thing is even more, we keep saying really, right? They're just slapping us in the face with this stuff, right? They don't even care anymore. They're just slapping us in the face with whatever they think, whatever they want, and they really are putting a lot of our own citizens at risk here.
They are. And Mike, I want to thank you both for helping us share the message. The National Sheriff Association has taken a very, very strong stance to protect communities. There are 3,080 sheriffs in this country to make sure every sheriff is standing united, following their oath of office to support the Constitution, support the laws of their state. But most important is enhance that quality of life for the people in their counties.
Well, Sheriff, we appreciate you. We support you. And again, thank you again for joining us. If you could make it onto this podcast again, we'd so appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you guys for what you do.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks.
You too. Thank you. That's Sherrif Mark. Oh my, Mark Dannels. Gosh, this is a leader, folks. This is someone we count on, and he should be at the table, as he said. He should be at the table to help solve these problems. But I think there are other agendas at work. This maybe isn't about solving anything. It's about allowing this to happen, to allow that administration, the new administration, to gain more and more control.
And not just them, everybody they're associated with too. All the we'll call them cronies, right? So they can all benefit from it.
Yeah, it's a real shame. It's a tragedy. So, folks, that's a wrap for this week. To reach us for any of your wealth management and insurance needs, call 833-FIN-GUYS. Visit our website at thefinancialguys.com. For my co-host, Mike Sperrazza, I'm Mike Hoeflich. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Remember, if you're not able to watch the TFG Aftershow live on Facebook, you can always find our episodes on YouTube. Have a great weekend. Again, thank you to Sherrif Mark Dannels, and please join us again next week on the TFG Aftershow.